All right. Now you would think that Easter Sunday is a layup for a pastor, right? Because like the church is here because of Easter Sunday, and you would think that'd be the easiest sermon in the world to preach. Not for me. I have a hard time with the Easter sermons because, I guess we could just read the account every year, and that's probably what I should do. But for some reason, I thought, well, they can read the account at home. That's not why they come here. They come here for something else. So um, for the first several years, I didn't even preach Easter. Those of you who may have been around that long, we used to do the skit guys on Easter because I was resting up from Passover, and then somebody started complaining. I won't mention any names that we need to have sermons on Easter too, and she who must be obeyed decided that we need those. So, well, it is her church. In fairness, she founded it. But anyway, so I started preaching them, and I had this kind of batch. The nice thing about being around for 11 years now is you can go back and do reruns. And so I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. And leading up to this, I wasn't worried because I knew the sermon I was going to preach. I knew it was a sermon I had preached like in the third year. And I thought, I'll just preach that again. No one here will remember it. Some of you weren't even here then, right? And right as I was got home from Passover on Thursday night, I thought, I ought to check to make sure I haven't preached that sermon again. Because I really did like that sermon. And I started going back through Vimeo. Oh, I preached it 2 years ago. So I thought that was too soon. You guys will surely remember 2 years ago. And so I thought, okay, it's Thursday night and I have no sermon for Saturday. So I'm praying about it, and I wake up the next morning, and I'm kind of in this like state where I get in because she wakes up too early. So I get up and move to the guest bedroom when she wakes up so I can sleep longer like a normal human being. And but sometimes I don't sleep in that moment, and that was one of these things. I was just sitting there, and my mind's going. I'm worried. What am I going to preach? Now it's Friday morning, right? And I just felt God gave me something, but it didn't make sense. It was 2 words: born again. All right? I know the concept of born again, but that's not usually preached at Easter. And I thought, that's interesting, Lord, but I don't know what to do with that. And then he gave me this: Peter. Okay, cool. And I'm waiting for the rest, and it doesn't come. So I thought, okay, that was good, Lord, but it's like now Friday afternoon, and I've got born again and Peter. That's not a sermon. And then the Lord's kind of saying, no, it's time for you to read about Peter. I thought, oh, okay, so I got to do the work now. Okay. So we're going to preach today about this idea that you must be born again through Peter's eyes as it pertains to the resurrection. So I don't know. I haven't ever looked at it this way before. But Peter's interaction with Jesus starts in a miraculous way. And we kind of know the story, but I want to walk through there. I want to pick that up as Jesus first meets Peter. And then we're going to talk about Peter's life a little bit with Jesus. And then we're going to talk about what happens when Jesus is raised from the dead. So there's a big setup for you. So very first, let me read you a very strange verse in the Bible to start this out. And you're probably going to not know why it's strange, but I'll explain that too. Don't worry. I'm here to explain this to you all. Jesus left the synagogue and went to the home of Simon. That'd be Simon Peter. Simon changes his name later. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked Jesus to help her. So he bent over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her, and she got up at once and began to wait on them. So I didn't know that his mother-in-law was Ukrainian, but apparently she must have been, because that's exactly what every Ukrainian would do. Get up and start, and then grumble about working. But that's how it works, right? That must be his mother-in-law must be Ukrainian. But why is this a strange scripture? Why is that weird? Well, because look, this is Luke 4:38, right? Let me move ahead to the next thing, because the strange thing is you'll see next. Now, this is Luke 5. This comes after it. And here's what Luke 5 says. So it was, as a multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, that he stood by the lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake, but the fishermen had gone from them and were washing their nets. And then he got into one of those boats, which was Simon. See, here's the thing. The first one, when he meets Simon's mother-in-law, he had not yet met Simon. Isn't that weird? What's he doing going to Simon's house? He hasn't met him yet. Isn't that peculiar? I believe, and I can't say with authority, but I believe that Jesus walked in the Spirit with his Spirit's leadings the very same way that we walk with the Spirit and his Spirit's leadings. It's just he had all the gifts of the Spirit full-fledged all the way up. Like if you have, like back when we have audio, you have these little audio things and you turn them up and it goes boom, and all the way to the top, like turn it up to 11. That's how Jesus had the gifts of the Spirit. And so what he had was leading from God. Is because you need to start gathering up your disciples, which is what he's doing. He's already gathered 2 of them. And so he knows his next disciple is Simon. And he knows where he lives. And he goes there. But Simon's not there. That's why he visits with the mother-in-law, because Simon's not there. Simon's gone. Now, we find out in the next chapter that he's gone fishing. Now, I think that's a little bit funny, because I think if I lived with my mother-in-law, I'd go fishing a lot too. I just think so. I also think that if I had to live with a mother-in-law, I'd maybe fish all night. And a sick mother-in-law's got to be even worse, but that's how things were in those days, right? They lived together like that. They all were in one house. Now, I've never had to live with a mother-in-law. I've had 3 of them. I've never had to live with one of them. My wife does not have to live with her mother-in-law, and I don't want her living with her mother-in-law either. That would be a bad household. But that's how things were done then. And in fact, not only were they done, they all lived together, but they all contributed, because, man, this is driving me nuts. Can I have my other microphone, please? I can't do this with a suit. I just can't. I will go hands-free next time, but I just can't. Thank you. Am I muted? No, okay. It just takes a second. Patience. Okay. I'd rather have one hand free and one hand on the mic and let you all hear me without. I didn't, but he did. I know. But Reagan was on it. Okay. Where was it? Oh yeah, they all contribute. They all contribute to the family income, because they were serving Rome. Remember, Rome has conquered them, and they have taxes all the time, and that means they had to pay the taxes, which means everybody had to pull their weight. Everybody in that household worked, including his mother-in-law. I don't know what she did, whether she had some kind of a little laundry business where she cleaned people's clothes, or maybe she repaired them. Maybe she was a tent maker. People took up jobs in order to make ends meet, because nobody was in a lap of luxury. So I actually think that one of the reasons that Peter was out fishing was because they needed more money. Because not only is mom not working anymore, they have to pay for her too, because she's going to get medicine. They have doctors. This wasn't just as, oh, she has a headache. We were going to give her a Tylenol, but Jesus is here. Good. Can you pray for her and save us 2 pills? This is a very serious condition. She has a high fever, and she was dying. This is not fever 101. This is more like a fever 106, and it won't come down. Now, parents, if you ever had a kid get a fever 105 or something, or 104, you know what that's like. It's not coming down. And that's what this was. So when Jesus rebuked the fever and it left her and she got up, that was a great miracle, because he literally saves her life. But Peter's not there, because he's out trying to earn more money to make up for the loss of income in their family. I also think that Peter's doing what guys do. We throw ourselves into our work. We don't deal with this kind of stuff very much. I'm sure that his wife was probably very upset, very worried, and of course Peter's probably worried too, and all this is happening. And so when that happens to guys, we say, oh, I got to go work. And we just throw ourselves into work and take ourselves out of the situation. I think those 2 things were going on at the moment that Jesus shows up at the house. Now, the irony is that Peter doesn't have to be fishing right now, because Jesus is coming, but he doesn't know that. And this is going to kind of be a pattern in Peter's life, as you're going to see with this entire encounter with Jesus. So let's go back now to the scripture, which is interesting, because what's happened is when Jesus shows up, they fished all night and caught nothing. We find that out next verse. Man, imagine that. Now, I don't know. So I've done work where I've had to pull all-night shifts, and some of you, I know, have pulled that midnight shift too. And you know that's tiring. I have also done all-nighters that weren't a shift. That's a more tiring thing. See, here's the thing. Like when I was a security guard for a while, I'd work all night. That's tiring, but it's your job. What's really even more tiring is the job I have now. Because the job I have now, when I'm not preaching, this is easy. With the job I have now, I run into problems. Right? I'm a programming technical guy. And I run into a problem that has no solution. That's usually when it hits my desk. and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm working through it, and sometimes I can't let go of it. I have a very obsessive behavior that way. And I will start working in the evening, and I'll keep working late into the night. And it has been in my lifetimes when I look up and see the sun coming up in the window, and I still don't have the answer to the problem. That's a much more tiring overnight. Because you realize at that moment, I should have gone to bed because I got nothing done. I didn't get one thing finished here. I still have this problem, and now I'm tired. That's the worst, that achy, tired, you realize I should have just slept. This was useless. And you're frustrated, and you're angry, and that's where Peter was. He fished all night and caught nothing. But whereas I simply sit in my chair and go, this man's working. Those fish nets were heavy, and they'd throw them out in the water as far as it would go, and they would wait, and they would pull them in. And I don't know if you ever pulled wet something through water. Like you take even just take your shirt, throw it in the water, and pull it back through. You know how much weight that gathers. Now imagine an entire fishing net, big enough to catch a huge catch of fish. Imagine pulling those things up. And then you get there and you think you don't know because you're pulling through the water. It feels like there might be something in there. There, in fact, might be something in there. It might be seaweed or driftwood. And you're pulling it up, and you finally get it up, and there's nothing in the net. All that work, pulling it up again and again and again, and 100 times in a night. And every time it comes up with nothing in it. And then daybreak starts coming up over the horizon. And Peter's thinking, I should have just gone to bed. I got nothing to show for this except blistered hands and a lot of tired. And then they have to clean their nets. When they say clean their nets, they don't mean like, a little toothbrush, clean them all up. That means there's seaweed and junk in it, and they have to get that out. And sometimes it's torn, and they have to repair it. And that's what they're doing when Jesus shows up. They've parked their boats on a useless night, probably the first time in his life he hasn't caught a fish. I mean, a fish? I can catch a fish in a night. He couldn't catch anything. And he's sitting there repairing things. He's tired. He realized I'm going to get home, I'm going to wash up, maybe catch 1 hour of sleep, and I got to come back out for the next shift because I need to get something to feed my family. That's where Peter is when Jesus comes up. Now, Jesus is being followed by a crowd because everywhere Jesus went, he was followed by a crowd. And so he was trying to teach him and talk to him, and they're crowding around, and the crowd keeps growing, and he realizes, And so he sees this boat. He realizes if he could go out a little ways in the water, he could see them all at once and they could hear him. But I love what happens. He sees them and just goes and gets in one. He doesn't ask. He doesn't, anybody's boat? No. He just goes, climbs in the boat. Now, I was part of a boating community in Grapevine, Texas for a little while. We had sailboats and stuff. I didn't, but I sailed with people who did. If you ever want to get a boat owner's attention, climb into their boat. I'm just telling you, they could be in the shop getting bait or beer. It won't matter. They see you climbing a boat. Oh, hey, buddy, what you doing there? They come running right back out. So this is what happens. He just goes and climbs in the boat, which happens to be Simon's, but Jesus knows what he's doing. And so he comes running up. Excuse me, sir, Mr. Rabbi, my boat, what are you doing? He says, you know what? I need to talk. Can you push out a little bit so I could speak with them? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure, why not? So he climbs in the boat, works it, gets it out a little ways, and Jesus preaches. And I would love to know Jesus' sermon at that moment because he's preaching to Peter in the boat. I just don't know what he's preaching. It must have been, though. Would have been hilarious to hear what Jesus was saying. But when it's all done, he dismisses the crowd, and they all leave. And Jesus kind of looks around and goes, this is a fishing boat, isn't it? I don't see any fish. Hey, I have an idea. Let's go out and fish. Peter's sitting there thinking, okay, so you're an amazing speaker, and you clearly know scriptures, but you also clearly know nothing about fish. Why would I take a tourist out in my boat right now? This isn't a charter, right? To go fishing. That's not what I'm here for. I'm tired. And you can hear it kind of come out in Peter's words. He says, Master, we fished all night and we caught nothing. And Jesus is just looking at him. Didn't ask you that, Peter. Okay, all right. Okay, we'll do it. Just because you said so. As we say, at your word. Okay, that's fine. just because you said so. You know what I'll do? I'm going to throw my net out. You can almost see it happening. I'm going to throw my net out, and it's going to hit the water. And when it does it, I'm going to pull it back up, and that's all of a sudden his boat's getting pulled to the side because there's so many fish in it. Can you imagine? All night, nothing? The thing barely hits the water, and it's suddenly full of fish. Something else pretty remarkable happens next, because he's pulling it in, and it's struggle because it's so full. And he gets it into his boat. And I believe, based on what the scripture says, the fish are multiplying in the boat. I just think Jesus is going like that, because there's more fish here than he can handle. Well, the net size of the boat, there should never be more fish than he can handle, but suddenly there's more fish than he can handle. And he calls to his partner, hey, I need help. And his partner gets in his boat and comes out. And the partner says, throw me some of those fish. They're throwing the fish over, and there's too much for his boat. Jesus is just doing something, I think. And what they're seeing here is the greatest fish catch of their lives, and they're professional fishermen. And you know fishermen love a good fishtail. You ever talk to one? This is the fishtail of all fishtails. And so when it's all over, Peter's looking at this and then looks at Jesus just smiling at him. And he heard his sermon. I don't know what the sermon was, but it hit him. And he realizes what I'm looking at right now is miraculous. This isn't normal. This man sitting in my boat is not just a guy who can speak. There's something about it. He doesn't know what. He won't know for a couple of years. But he knows there's something about this guy that's just different than any other guy he's ever met. And so he says something remarkable. He says, get away from me, for I am a sinful man. Why? Because in those days, the Pharisees stayed away from sinners, because they believed, they in fact were taught, that if they touched something unclean, it made them unclean. And then they'd have to go back this whole ritual, which is why Pharisees and Sadducees would be very careful not to touch anybody. They actually had bells on their stuffs they could ring to little tiny things, and they had these big swirling skirts like with these tassels hanging off them and saying, stay away from me. Don't touch me, because I can't be unclean. I have to go to the temple. So here's this guy who has to be the holiest man he's ever met, and he says, you can't be here right now. You don't understand. I'm a sinful man. What he did not understand, though, was the person he was talking to would not be unclean if he touched him. In fact, what would happen is if he touched Peter, Peter becomes clean. So he doesn't see that yet. He's going to, but he doesn't see it yet. And in fact, the most remarkable part of the story is that Peter walks away from the biggest catch of his life, because Jesus says, okay, you follow me. He says, okay, I have no idea where we're going, but I can't not do that. And so he follows him. I guess this partner's divvy up the spoils and take him home to his wife. But I just want to show you that the night of emptiness becomes this morning of abundance in this story. And they're in the same boat, using the same sea and the same net. Nothing's changed. The only thing different from the night and the day is Jesus is in the boat. See, but that makes the difference. The difference is Jesus is in the boat, because Jesus' power reveals our weakness but doesn't leave us in it. Peter can't even fish right. He's a professional fisherman who can't even fish right, basically. Jesus said, but I'm not leaving you like that. And it's not just a profession in all things. He's not going to leave us like that, not at all. As C.S. Lewis put it, he says that God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from himself, because it's not there. There's no such thing. So many Christians, so many people, they call themselves Christians, want God to fix their life. Make my life happy, right? Can you please just fix this and then I'll be happy? But they don't want God in their life. They just want him to fix it for them. And God said, I can't do that. There is no happiness without me. That's why it's a mess. You need Jesus in the boat with you. You can't just say, hey, could you help me catch fish today? You can stay on the shore. No, you need him in the boat. That's the problem. The invitation from Jesus is never to try harder. It's to trust deeper. He didn't tell Peter, you know what, you need to pull that harder, faster. If you can make more casts, I think you can catch some fish. Somebody said. He said, let's try it with me. Trust me. Right? Not try harder. Trust deeper. That's the call from Jesus always, and that's what Peter answers. Now, Peter follows him. He becomes a disciple. Sometime later, Jesus is going to give him another glimpse of heaven. This was his first glimpse. And you understand why Peter had such a hard time with this. In his day, everything holy was separated from them. Even in the tabernacle, they had this veil that separated the holy of holy places. The priests were holy. The rabbis were holy. Everybody was separated. And you would go to tabernacle, and you would read the word, you do the things, and then you would leave the tabernacle, and then you had your life. And this is exactly how I think a lot of Christians try to live their life today. There's the God world. Congratulations, you're in the God world right now. And then there's the real world, which is what you're going to hit Monday morning, right? The God world's interesting, and I like that, but I'm in the real world now, right? That's how Peter lived his life. There's the temple, there's the God world, and there's my fishing boat, and that's the real world. In the real world, I have to fish tonight. The God world's nice, but the real world is where I live, move, have my being, and have to pay my bills. So I'll do this now. When Jesus stepped into the boat, he was telling him, that's no longer the way it works. God isn't in the temple anymore. He's right here in the boat with you. And if he's not in the boat with you, then you're without God. Things are changing for Peter. And so he's going to get another glimpse of that now in this amazing moment we call the Mount of Transfiguration, where Jesus takes Peter and John and his brother, and they go up to this mountain, just the three of them, well, four of them. And Jesus basically institutes a Zoom call with heaven. I don't know how to put it. And that's what's going to happen next. But what's going to happen is heaven's going to be right in front of Peter. Peter's going to see heaven basically open up right there. Again, Jesus telling him it's no longer separate. You understand? It's right here, right now. So that's the next passage here. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John and led them on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. What that means is they got to see him the way he really is. They get to see him with all of his glory from heaven. And it says, his face shone like the sun, his clothes became as white as the light, and behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with him. How amazing is this? There's like, all of a sudden, Jesus is having a chat with Elijah and Moses, two of the most important people in the Old Testament, and the most important person in history, Jesus, all talking, and they're watching this. And Peter can't help himself. I love Peter, by the way. He reminds me of me. Peter just puts it out there, man. While Jesus is still talking to Elijah and Moses, he walks up and goes, man, it's a good thing I'm here, Jesus. That's just what he says. Lord, it's good for us to be here. It literally says, yeah, I could see why you brought me here. I have an idea. You're going to love it. We're going to make 3 tabernacles right here. One for you, one for Elijah, one for Moses. We could set up a little kind of queue line with the velvet ropes going down that way, and we could have people come up and talk with you guys, and this will be so great for the movement. The ministry is going to love this. We're going to keep people coming. Are you kidding me? And we could have this here, and we could just keep this going. This is a great idea. I can see why you brought me here. I'm your idea guy, right? And while he's talking, this is kind of funny, God interrupts him. And says, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. Now, when God has to interrupt you, you need to stop talking. It's just a little piece of advice. If you're talking, God has to interrupt you. Shut up. Just be quiet. That's not a good sign when God has to interrupt you. In fact, this is how they reacted too. When they heard the voice, they fell flat on their face. They realized, Peter go, oh, okay, maybe I was out of line, And Jesus comes over and says, it's okay. And they look up and it's just Jesus. But this still shows how Peter's mindset is. And it's not so different than ours. Because he's saying, okay, I get the heaven thing, but we can make earth better with it. Right? I get it now. We're going to have this, and we're going to have better teaching, and we'll have better tabernacles. You guys are the best. We can set it all up right here because he misunderstands the mission of Jesus. See, he sees heavenly glory and tries to make it an earthly monument. But don't we do that? A couple of years ago, there was a big revival going on in Kentucky. What did we do? Did we pray for the revival to come here? No. We wanted to go to Kentucky to see it. His instinct is to build something, to contain something that cannot be contained. You can't contain God's glory. And we definitely need to learn how to be still sometimes. God's trying to talk to us and we won't shut up. Sometimes we just need to be still. God says, be still and know I am the Lord. But that's the struggle on earth, right? We need to understand the nature of the kingdom. Peter wanted a heavenly place. Jesus wanted to take him to heavenly places. You see the difference? He says, I got a plan here. He wants permanence on the mountain, and Jesus says, I can't stay here. I'm moving to the cross, something that Peter did not understand. He cannot possibly conceive of what Jesus is about to do. It makes no sense to him at all. It doesn't fit into our earthly plans. That doesn't make sense. You're going to get killed? This is better. Getting killed is not going to accomplish anything because he doesn't see the spiritual aspect of it. He's still seeing it through earthly eyes, which isn't unusual to him. But we need to make sure we never confuse a spiritual moment with our eternal mission. Because sometimes we have them. Sometimes we've had moments we felt God spoke to us. You know, you felt God's Spirit, like, oh, and you think this is it. No, that's not it. That was a moment. You still have work to do. There's still a job to be done. You still have growth yet. Just because God blessed you with this great spiritual moment doesn't mean you're done. Paul was swept up in the third heaven. He wasn't done. So we have to understand that we can't confuse this spiritual moment with an eternal mission. I love A.W. Tozer on this. The greatest enemy of faith may be our desire to settle too soon. This is good enough. Let's stay here. God is always moving us forward. He's always giving us room to grow. When you're done growing, he'll take you home. Until then, keep growing. He's still trying to move you someplace. Now, let's move to the next time when we see Peter. And we're going to see that he now knows who Jesus is. He knows he's the Son of God. He's already confessed that. This is getting to the end. In fact, I'm picking this story up for those of you here Thursday. I'm going to pick up right where we landed on Thursday here. And Thursday we ended with, they sang a hymn and they went out. I'm going to pick right up there again. Because I want to show you Peter now and how he reacts after that Passover meal that we just celebrated. He's still not fully understanding. He's still believing that Jesus is coming to establish a kingdom on earth. And anything outside of that makes no sense to him. And if it makes no sense to him, he's rejecting it. And we do this all the time. We reject what God's trying to tell us because it doesn't make sense to us. That can't be right, God. And that's what happens here. Now, Jesus is trying to warn them. As they're going out there, he tells them, now listen, all of you are going to have to stumble because of me. It was written, this is prophetic, I will strike the shepherd and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I've been raised, then I'll go before you to Galilee. So he's telling them exactly what's going to happen, but they can't even hear it because it doesn't make any sense to them. But I love Peter's response. Not me. You kidding me? He says, no, Jesus, they all may stumble. I get it, but not me. There's no way that's going to happen. And Jesus says, you know what? You're going to, before the cock crows twice, the rooster crows twice, you're going to deny me 3 times. Peter says, no. Even if I died with you, I'm not going to deny you. Because he's sure in his own self what he can do. And by the way, he's not telling you here, but he has a sword. Right there. I got it. Even if I have to die, I got you, Jesus. You don't have to worry. Peter's here, the fisherman, with a sword. I got this. I am not going to deny you. I'm strong. I know who you are. I'm not going to deny you. And he's putting his faith in his strength. And because he thinks this is going to be a battle on earthly terms, and he doesn't understand the battles on spiritual terms, he doesn't even understand where the war is being fought. He doesn't understand yet. I'm not going to, he says, not going to happen. But then comes the showdown on the mountain. So it starts, of course, with Judas' betrayal, because he knows where they were going. He slipped out and got them and came back. But I want you to watch the scripture here. It says that he received a cohort of troops and officers, and they all came for Jesus. You see the movies? There'd be like 2 guys carrying a spear with Roman armor and a priest. That's why the movies always show it. The word here is cohort. And we use the word cohort, meaning friends. But cohort had a specific definition in the Roman army. A cohort was a minimum of 480 soldiers. It could be as much as 1,000. They sent a minimum of 480 Roman soldiers, not holding spears, full gear, to get Jesus. That seems a little overkill, doesn't it? Jesus and 12 disciples. But the problem was they had been told that this was an insurrectionist who was declaring himself the king of the Jews and was leading a revolt against Rome. And they were told that the last time this man spoke, 5,000 people showed up from nowhere. Well, you're not sending 8 people there, because if he can call it 5,000 at will, they need people. They may have been worried if 480 weren't enough. So they all show up. All of a sudden, this loud noise. I don't know if you ever watched the movie of the armies run, everything's clinking and clanking. That's loud. That breaks through the silence of Gethsemane, and there they are. Now, my favorite part of the story is this. They come up, and Jesus says, who are you here to see? Jesus knows. And they said, we're here to get Jesus of Nazareth. And Jesus says, I am he. And Judas, who betrayed him, with them, and all of them, when he said, I am he, fell to the ground. What? 480 men just went splat? What? See, here's where, unfortunately, our Bibles translate it wrong, because that's not what the Greek says. This is what the Greek says. Jesus stepped forward and says, I am. He declared his name. That's what the Greek says. Our translations add he, but it's not there. Jesus says his name. And just speaking his name flattened a cohort of Roman soldiers. And there's Peter with his sword on his hip. I got you, Jesus. Right? So they picked themselves back up. And one more time, he says, who are you looking for? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. What? It's Jesus of Nazareth. I already told you. That's me. This time he just says, that's me. He said, but if you came for me, let these go. Because prophetically it was said that he would not lose any of his disciples, and he didn't. He didn't want them, because typically that's what Rome did. They didn't only gather the leader, they gathered all of his lieutenants. They killed them all. He said, let these guys go. You have me. But now Peter springs into action. 640 soldiers surrounding him. And there's the priest and his little tiny servant taking notes. And Peter pulls out his mighty sword and attacks that servant. Not the 640 cohort, no. We're not going after them. This little guy who's sitting there writing with his pen looks up, and Peter's attacking him because he has to do something. That's the only person he can manage to attack. He cuts his ear off. Jesus picks it up, puts it back on. Peter, put it away. Put your sword away. My Father gave me this cup to drink, and I'm going to drink it. There's a plan here that I'm following. It's a heavenly plan, and you don't understand it, but I'm doing it. I told you I was going to do it. I've been telling you for years. This is how this ends. But Peter now has nothing to grab onto. He thought he had it all figured out. Jesus was coming to establish himself as the king and going to reestablish Israel as the nation. They were going to conquer Rome. He had it figured out. By the way, if you want to know why the Jews still don't believe in Jesus, it's for that reason. They have 13 characteristics of the Messiah. 13, not 12. 12 of them come from the Bible. One of them comes from oral teaching that he's going to be a warrior. So since Jesus didn't establish the kingdom, they don't think that was him. But if you look at the 12 that came from scriptures, it was clear that was him. This is Peter. He grew up in that. Now he doesn't know what to think. Have you been there? Have you had God do something in your life that was so radical that you lost your faith in everything because you don't know what to think anymore? This is called a crisis of faith. I've been through them. That's what happens. The weird thing is Jesus didn't need Peter's protection from Rome, but Peter needed Jesus' protection from the world, and he just didn't see it. So as God's plan unfolds, fear sets in for Peter. That's what happens, by the way. That's how fear comes. The Bible tells us God does not give us a spirit of fear, but a sound mind. So if you're having fear coming in, it's not coming from God. But the reason fear got there was because of Peter's mindset, and he was trusting things on earth. And so fear set in. And then we see his betrayal. Now Peter, who swore he would never betray Jesus, he follows Jesus where they take him off to trial. And Peter's below in the courtyard, and one of the servant girls of the high priest probably saw the cut on that guy's ear, saw Peter warming himself by the fire, and she looked at him and says, "Hey, you were with that Nazarene Jesus." He said, "No, I don't even know what you're talking about." Jesus? What? Well, I don't even know. See, because he's afraid they're going to take him too. He wants to know what's going on, but he's afraid to be taken. So he left, and as he left, he hears the rooster crow the first time. I want to show you something interesting to hear, though. Peter is warming himself by the enemy's fire. The enemy's fire. That's what he's warming himself by. Oftentimes we go running around, and we don't even realize it, but we're actually seeking comfort with the enemy while crying out to God, "What are you doing?" This happens through the Bible. David runs to the Philistines. Abraham runs to Egypt. We warm ourselves by the enemy's fire and complain to God instead of standing strong with God. This is how denial happens. Okay, moving on. We know it's going to happen 2 more times. 2 more times they'll come up to him and say, "Hey, you were with Jesus, right?" And he's going, No, not me. This must have been a little fisherman that looked like me. It wasn't me. He says, "No, certainly you're one of them because you're a Galilean." And he actually swore an oath. "I do not know this man you're talking of." And then he heard the cock crow again. At that moment, he breaks down and cries. Do you know why, by the way? It's not because it turns out Jesus was right. It's because he remembers. He remembers because Jesus once said this: "Whoever denies me before men, him I will also deny before my Father who is in heaven." Peter was listening when Jesus said that. And he just denied Jesus not once but 3 times before men. How did that happen? Listen, Satan will always look for ways, and one of his best ways to trap you is your own mouth, your own boasts, your own pride. Oh, he'll use that against you. You want to see how much control you have over your life? There's some sin you have. We all have them, some secret sin maybe no one knows about, and it's yours, and you've been trying to beat it, and it's not working. Just do this. Wake up in the morning and say, "I swear that I will not do this sin, whatever it is, all day, 24 hours. Just watch, because Satan's hearing." "Oh, really? Let me show you who's in charge." And you'll do it. Because you're fighting a heavenly battle with earthly means. See, Peter made his decision, and now nothing on earth is going to be able to change it. Nothing. There's nothing that can be done. He knows it's done. This whole thing wasn't just a mistake, it's disqualification. He is no longer qualified to be his disciple. He's no longer qualified to be a Christian. When he gets to heaven and God's judging him, Jesus is going to say, "I don't know that man." He's done. Do you understand? This is his mindset. I'm done. There's no coming back from this. And even when we saw that scripture we talked about, we read at the beginning, where they find the strips of cloth and he sees for his own eyes, Jesus has risen from the dead, just like he said he would. He's sitting there thinking, "Won't do me any good. That'll probably help John. But not me. I denied Jesus 3 times in front of men, and I know what that means. I'm done. This isn't going to help me anymore." Corrie ten Boom once said, "There's no pit so deep that God's love isn't deeper still," but Peter doesn't know that yet. Does not know that yet. So what happens? After Jesus is raised from the dead, they're sitting around talking, and Peter says, "I guess I'm going to go back to fishing. What else is there? Jesus was amazing for 3 years, but I got nothing now." He's risen from the dead, cool and all that, but it's not going to help me. I might as well go back and be the best fisherman I can and take care of my wife and my mother-in-law. That's all I have left. And the other ones who were with him were also used to be fishermen, thought that actually sounds like a decent idea. Let's all go. So he says, I'm going to go fishing. They said, yeah, we're going too. So they went out immediately into the boat in the night, and they caught nothing. Well, this must have brought back nice memories for Peter, huh? Nothing all night, all of them. You sure this is the spot? Yeah, this is the spot. No fish here today, don't know why. They fish all night and catch nothing. Same boat, same nets, same futility. Peter has gone back to where he was before Jesus found him. But good thing, Jesus is about to call him forward. He's about to remind him, I called you out of that. You're no longer a fisherman. You're now a fisher of men. Did you not remember that? So they're kind of bringing their boats to shore a little bit, and they're kind of looking at the sun coming up, and there's this guy on the bank. And he looks out to them. I love Jesus. Hey, kids, children, did you catch any fish? Got a fire going here. Fish would be great with it. Could you catch any? And they said, no. He said, well, you know what? If you threw that net of yours on the right side of the boat, I bet you'd catch some. Now, I don't know if you know how lakes work. I've been in them. If you have a boat in a lake, the water on the left side of the boat is the same as the water on the right side of the boat. Just so you know. And fish, they don't know your boat's there. They swim back and forth however they want. So here again, they're like, okay, here's some of these guys doesn't know what he's talking about. And they said, okay, this will be fun. Yeah, let me show you, crazy man on the shore. Watch this. They throw it over instantly. Now, you would think this would be a déjà vu moment for Peter, but he doesn't even catch it. He's helping them pull us up, and John says, I bet you that's Jesus. John says it, not Peter, John. And then Peter looks up and said, that is Jesus, and jumps out of the boat and starts swimming to shore, because that's who Peter is. He doesn't think first, he acts first. Love Peter. Now, he goes there, and they have breakfast and everything, but Peter's still thinking, this is wonderful. I'm glad to see Jesus again. We knew he had risen. I get to see him now. That's great. But again, this will help John. It's not going to help me. I'm done. He almost doesn't want to meet Jesus' eye, because he knows Jesus knows what he did. All through breakfast, he's like not looking at Jesus. Everybody else is talking around, all the good times they had. He's saying nothing. And when breakfast is over, Jesus says, Peter, come with me. I want you to see what Jesus does. He takes him aside. He says, Peter, do you love me more than these? Now, what he's saying is not, do you love me more than these do? He's saying, do you love me more than you love these people? And Peter says, yes, Lord, you know I love you. He said, well, then feed my lambs. He says to him a second time, Simon, do you love me? And Peter says, Lord, you know I love you. He said, well, then you need to tend my sheep. And a third time he says, do you love me? And Peter's grieved. He says, Lord, you know all things. You know I love you. I do. You know that. You can see my heart. He says, good. Then feed my sheep. I want you to see that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. So what does Jesus do? He gives him a take back for every time. I know you deny me, but do you love me? I know you deny me, but do you love me? I know you denied me, but do you love me? But watch what he says each time. Feed my sheep, take care of my lambs, spread the gospel. I called you to be a disciple. See, I don't care what you've done. I care what you're willing to do. And that's what God's saying to you. I don't care what you've done. What I'm asking you is, what are you willing to do? Do you love me? And are you willing to do something about that? That's what I want to know. This is when Peter gets reborn. This is when Peter realizes he's not disqualified. How about you? You've been trying to work without Jesus? Futility? Empty nights? Not going the way you want? Have you been warming yourself by the wrong fire? Find yourself with your friends who you know aren't Christian, trying to get them to make you feel better? Do you wonder if grace can still find you? Or are you too far gone? I got the good news for you. Peter wrote a letter to you. He did. He wrote a letter to you, and he wants you to see, straight from his pen to yours, the one who went through all this and experienced all that has a letter for you, and this is what he says. Praise be to God and Father, our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he has given us new birth, with a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Good news, Peter says. You can be born again. You can start over. It doesn't matter what you have done. What matters is what you are willing to do when Jesus asks you, do you love me?